Well, there is a sense in which the civil war may be reaching some form of conclusion. Certainly the rebellion is not, of course, going to be victorious. Assad is not going to be toppled, and ISIS is going to lose its territorial holdings to the coalition assembled against it. Does that mean that we're returning to the situation, the status quo ante bellum, so to speak, of 2011? No, I don't think so. I think that Syria will remain divided, probably the Americans and Kurds in control of the east, the rebels still in some enclave with the Turks in the north, the regime controlling the rest, and even the regime itself heavily penetrated, so to speak, and dependent upon the goodwill of its patrons, namely Russia and Iran. So what you have, and we're looking at in Syria today, is a fragmented country, deeply penetrated by foreign powers, including Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the United States, utilising their local clients, including the rebels, the regime, and the Kurds, and that situation is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. I think that's probably not achievable. You're quite correct to point out that Israeli officials have said that and reiterated that is indeed the goal. I don't understand how that can happen. I understand how Israel can continue to take action against Iranian infrastructure in Syria, including attempts to construct bases for air defense or for UAVs and so on. That can be done from the air. I understand that Israel might be able to insist upon and achieve a distancing of the Iranians and their clients and allies and proxies from the border, whether it's 60 kilometers or whatever other distance is achieved. But the notion that you can completely remove any Iranian presence within Syria in its entirety, at a time when the Iranians have played a crucial role in defending the regime, probably spent around $30 billion on defending the regime, preserving it in the course of the last 5, 6, 7 years of war. It's very hard for me to see what mechanism Israel would use to achieve that. So I tend to think that to some degree is a kind of overstating of the Israeli position with the intention of achieving perhaps something a little bit less than that. But if that is indeed the position, yeah, frankly, I do find it difficult to see how it could be achieved. Yeah, I do think that it's become clear that Russia and Iran do have divergent interests in Syria, and I think it does appear that the Israeli system discerned that and made the notion of utilising that for Israeli purposes a goal, and it does look like there has been some success in achieving that. That is to say, indeed, as you mentioned, the Russians chose to turn their eyes aside and not utilise their air defence systems, for example, on May 10th, when Israel was carrying out some very extensive air operations over Syria against Iran, and also against the regime air defences, from what we can gather. So yes, that's clearly a result of the good diplomatic relations that currently exist between the governments of Israel and Russia. Israel accurately discerned a difference in strategy. They discerned, I think, that Russia had already achieved most of what it set out to achieve in Syria, namely preserving its naval bases, preserving the existence of the Assad regime, testing out its new army and its new weapon systems, and therefore making itself a crucial arbiter for Syria in the future. That's a very different agenda to the Iranians. There's a difference between the two, and yeah, I think that's an important point, and that Israel has exploited it so far. It'll be interesting to see whether Israel continues to be able to do that. Yeah, my sense is that what the United States wants to do is it wants to mobilise its allies, including Israel, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and others, in the joint goal of containing and then rolling back the very considerable Iranian gains that have taken place in the region over the last 6 or 7 years. I think that involves a kind of combined strategy of military, financial and political pressure on the Iranians and on their clients. And I think we can see how that's playing out in a variety of fronts, so to speak, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria and elsewhere, in which different elements of the American-led alliance, so to speak, in the region are engaging in order to try to turn back the Iranians, whether it's Israeli air action against Iranian facilities in Syria, or Saudi sponsorship of political forces against the Iranian political forces in Iraq, or Emirati and Saudi sponsored forces fighting the pro-Iranian Houthis in Yemen. What we can see is a kind of general effort being taken out, of course, one should add, of course, new United States sanctions with more to come against the Iranian central banking system, against Iranian officials, against Hezbollah officials, and so on and so forth. I think what we can begin to discern are the outlines of a general strategy intended to take on the Iranians in a number of areas in which they are traditionally weak and less able to effectively counter-strike with the intention of either causing the Iranians to overstretch and overspend, leading to greater unrest at home, or indeed leading the Iranians to conclude that retreat is necessary on a number of areas in which they've been advancing not so very long ago.